All right, let's talk about money. I mean, really talk about it. We use it every single day, but have you ever just stopped and asked, what is this stuff? What's its actual role in the whole economic machine? Is it just a handy tool, something to make buying and selling a little smoother? Or is it something way more powerful? We're going to dive right in because according to the work of economist Eckhard Hein, how you answer that one question puts you on one side of a huge divide that splits the entire world of economics right down the middle.
And this is the core question, right here. For centuries, the dominant view has been that money is basically a veil. It's useful, sure, but it just sits on top of the real economy. You know, our resources, our tech, how productive we are. But a rival theory says, nope, you're missing the whole point. It argues that money isn't a veil at all. It's the engine. It's the active force that literally builds and shapes the world we live in. So to really get to the bottom of this, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with that traditional view, what we're calling the money illusion. Then we'll contrast it with its challenger. We'll see how they go head-to-head over the interest rate. We'll explore some pretty mind-bending economic paradoxes that pop up. And finally, we'll look at why this whole debate completely changes how you think about economic policy.
Okay, first things first. Let's lay out the mainstream, orthodox position on money. This is the theory most of us kind of absorb by default, and it has a very specific name.
It's called real analysis. And the core idea here is that in the long run, money is neutral. A central bank can print more of it, sure, but that's only going to affect things like prices and inflation. It won't really change how many people have jobs, how much stuff we produce, or how fast the economy grows. In this world, those real things are all that matter. Money is just a helpful but ultimately passive lubricant in the system.
Now let's bring in the challenger. This alternative view, called monetary analysis, basically says that the traditional perspective is fundamentally flawed because it misunderstands the actual goal of a capitalist economy.
You see, the two views see the basic motivation of the economy in completely different ways. Real analysis sees a simple loop. A producer makes a commodity, C, sells it for money, M, and then uses that money to buy another commodity, C. So CMC. You start with a thing, you end with a different thing. Money's just the middleman. But monetary analysis, drawing from folks like Marx and Keynes, says, whoa, hold on. That's how a consumer thinks. A business starts with money, M, it uses that cash to produce a commodity, C, and sells it for more money, M prime, M, C, M prime. The entire point of the game is to end up with more money than you started with. And that, well, that changes everything.
And this leads to two totally opposite laws of how the economy works. Real analysis runs on something called Say's law. Basically, if you build it, they will come. The very act of producing stuff creates the wages and profits needed to buy that stuff, so you can't really have a major glut of unsold goods. But monetary analysis throws that out the window. It follows the principle of effective demand, which says demand comes first. Production only ramps up if people are actually out there spending money. If demand is low, the economy slows down, and it doesn't matter how much we're capable of producing.
And look, this isn't some brand new idea. Way back in the 30s, John Maynard Keynes was calling for this exact shift in thinking. He said we don't live in a simple, real exchange economy where money is just a pawn. He argued that we live in a monetary economy where the desire to get and hold on to money fundamentally changes our motivations and our decisions, and because of that, it changes the real outcomes of the economy itself.
Now this whole theoretical fight gets very, very real when you look at one specific thing, the interest rate. How you view the interest rate is a dead giveaway for which side of this debate you're on.
And here's the huge difference. Real analysis says there's a natural rate of interest out there, some ideal rate determined by real things like how productive we are and how much people want to save. The central bank's job is just to try and find that rate. But monetary analysis says, no way, there is no natural rate. The interest rate is a price, plain and simple. It's the price of money, and it's set by the central bank. It's not a natural thing to be discovered. It's a powerful policy lever that actively steers the economy and plays a huge role in who gets what.
This view is built on a really wild idea, endogenous money. So, you know the textbook story where banks take in our savings and then lend that money out? Well, this model says to forget that. It argues loans create deposits. It works like this. First, a company wants to invest, so it gets a loan. The bank literally creates that money out of thin air, ex nihilo. Second, the company spends that brand new money on wages, materials, you name it. Third, that money flows into the hands of households who then spend it, and it flows back to the companies. They call this the reflux. Finally, the company uses that money to pay back its loan, and poof, the money is destroyed. The key insight here, finance doesn't follow production, it has to come first.
So once you start thinking of the economy as being driven by demand, the world starts to look a little different. You begin to see these fascinating paradoxes, outcomes that are totally backward from the traditional point of view.
First up is the famous paradox of thrift. We're all told that saving money is a good thing, a virtue. But what if everybody decides to save more at the exact same time, like during a recession? Well, that means everyone is spending less. Less spending means fewer sales for businesses, which means they produce less and start laying people off. What's the result? The total national income falls. And since there's less income to save from in the first place, the total amount of savings in the whole economy can actually go down. An individual virtue becomes a collective problem.
And then there's this one, which is even more of a head-scratcher, the paradox of costs. The conventional wisdom is simple. Higher wages are bad for business because they eat into profits. But what if that's not always true? In an economy driven by demand, higher wages for workers mean they have more money to spend. And if that boost in consumer spending is big enough, it can make businesses produce more, invest more, and get this, even earn higher total profits in the end, even though their profit share of the pie is smaller.
This opens up a massive question for how we think about economic growth. Is the only way to get the economy growing to boost the share going to profits? Or could we, sometimes, get even stronger growth by boosting the share going to wages?
Turns out, it all depends on the underlying structure of the economy. In some economies, a wage hike might spark a huge jump in consumption that totally outweighs any hit to business confidence. That's what you'd call a wage-led growth regime. But in other economies, a wage hike might spook businesses so much that investment plummets, and that cancels out any benefit from more consumption. That's a profit-led regime. The really crucial point is that there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It all depends on the context.
Okay, so as you can probably guess, these two completely different ways of seeing the economy lead to completely different ideas about what governments and central banks should actually do.
If you're in the real analysis camp and you think money is neutral in the long run, then monetary and fiscal policy are just temporary fixes. The real work is in structural reforms, making labor markets more flexible or boosting competition. But if you're in the monetary analysis camp, then tools like the central bank's interest rate aren't just short-term tweaks. They have lasting effects on everything from growth to who gets what. The difference is huge. One side sees policy as fixing a machine that's already built. The other side sees policy as actually being part of the design and construction of the machine itself.
So when you boil it all down, this isn't just some dry academic debate for economists. It's a fundamental disagreement about what our economy even is. Is it some kind of self-correcting natural system that will always find its balance if we just get the real parts right? Or is it a social construct, a game whose rules are written in the language of money, credit, and debt? Rules that we humans create and that we can also change.
And that leaves us with one last massive question. If the monetary view is right, if decisions about interest rates and finance aren't just technical adjustments but are actually powerful acts that shape our entire society, then who should get to make those decisions? It pulls economics out of the abstract and puts it right at the heart of politics and power. Definitely something to think about.